They say the left hand, it drop mountains. They say the right hand, be slaying dragons.
All right, so I'm literally like just waking up. I'm waking up and I'm getting my thoughts on just one of the fights on the undercard that really had my attention going in. I didn't get a chance to make a video about it, but anybody who spoke to me about this fight and the build up to it, I was very adamant that Nahir Albright was going to beat Frank Martin. Frank Martin is a good fighter. He's an explosive fighter, but I think people were overrating and putting too much stock into what he did against the corpse of Rance Bartholomew. And I think in general, like Frank is good, but he's been in some big time fights. Like he beat Michelle Rivera, he fought Tank. But I just don't think he's as good as a lot of people in the fight game think he is. Like he's a good fighter. Like I'm not saying Frank is bad or anything like that, but he's not like he's a solid contender. I don't think he's a otherworldly fighter, because some people think about it like Frank Martin, like he's this big name otherworldly fighter. He's not that, but he's a good fighter, right? And I knew going into this fight against Nahir Albright that he was going to be in for a real fight, because Nahir Albright might not be a big name. He might not have been known by a lot of boxing fans prior to last night, but I've seen him fight multiple times. And I know one thing about Nahir Albright that I can say is that he's one of the craftiest fighters in boxing. He's a really good counter puncher. And believe it or not, even though the knockout percentage doesn't reflect it, he can actually punch. He can really punch. So I knew Frank Martin wasn't going to be in a real fight, and that's exactly what it was. Even though Frank Martin was known for and had the reputation for being a bigger puncher, it was actually Albright that was landing the more critical shots last night. He had Frank Martin hurt in the last round, and he had him hurt in one of the other rounds. And Frank Martin, he relies a lot on his explosiveness. So sometimes he would throw shots, and he would cross the line, and Nahir Albright will make him pay with really sharp, precise counter right hands and jabs and truth be told, I mean it was a close fight. I'm not gonna sit here and say like to me, seeing the Andy Hiroka Gary Anton Russell fight, in the second half of the fight, Andy Hiroka separated himself. Even though he didn't really do nothing in the first half, in the second half, the best moments of that fight were fought by Andy Hiroka in the second half of the fight, in my opinion, right? This fight was a bit more nip and tuck. I still think Nahir Albright did enough to win, but it was a little tighter because it really was one of those fights where it was more about what you liked. I would say Frank Martin was the busier fighter, at least through the first 6 rounds. And Albright was the guy that was being more accurate. So it really depends on what you're looking for. And I hate saying that because so many people say that. But in this fight, it was true. I think Albright won. I would say 6-4. And I always hear, I've come on here on YouTube and I've complained about so many decisions I haven't agreed with over the years. But one thing that people always tell me when they want to, make their points for fighters that they feel won the fight and disagree with me is that, oh, well, such and such finished the fight real strong in the last round. Well, Albright's best round damn near was the 10th round. He had Frank Martin ready to go, had him hurt, and that didn't do him no good as far as getting a win. But he got a draw, right? A draw isn't the best result, but it ain't the worst either. And in his situation, right, a guy who's not a big name, a guy that was supposed to get beat up by Frank Martin, to the eyes of many people. He went out there and he fought his heart out, and he had him hurt multiple times, and he showed that he deserves to fight on the top level of the 140-pound division. And this is not new. Like, he did lose to Jermaine Ortiz a couple years ago, but he's gotten better from that experience. He fought Keyshawn Davis to a majority of decision loss, and he actually had Keyshawn Davis hurt, was clipping him on his dome, bang, right? And that fight got ruled a no contest because Keyshawn Davis was smoking weed, and then he beat Carlos Balderas, right? He ruined Carlos Balderas. And now this for Frank Martin. So here, Albright, if you look at his body of work, that boy can fight. Let's call a spade a spade. That man can fight, and you know what? He's pretty cool too. Like, he's light skinned. He sings R&B songs. He can sing. So like he'll beat you up. He'll take your girl, and then he'll sing to her, right? He was singing after the Frank Martin fight, and that got a good reaction out of the crowd at the T-Mobile Arena. So yeah, man, I mean, as far as Frank Martin, he's still a good fighter. I think it is fair to question where he fits in the 140-pound division, because look, just being honest, Rances Bartholomew was a corpse of himself. I know Rances. I've been knowing Rances for almost 10 years. I was interviewing Rances Bartholomew back in like 2015 on when YouTube didn't even have StreamYard or any of these streaming platforms. You had to use Google Hangout to interview fighters, and I was interviewing Rances Bartholomew back then, right? So I remember going to San Antonio seeing Rances Bartholomew in person, and just seeing how old he looked in the face. I'm like, yeah, Frank Martin's gonna hurt this dude, and he did. You know, to his credit, he did. So I enjoyed the knockout, but I didn't put a ton of stock into it. But it was good to see him get back in the win column. You know, this is his first like real young live fighter he's fought since the Tank loss, and he failed to show a gap in class. He failed to show that he was truly a different fighter, or at the top level of the 140-pound division. And really, like, I like Albright, but Albright hasn't really. He's good, but he hasn't. You know, he's not a cemented top guy yet. Maybe he will be though. Maybe he's getting better. Maybe he's on that trajectory. But it was a good fight. It was a good fight. I definitely want to see a rematch, and I like the rematch to be 12 rounds. So, you know, PBC, TGB, Kenny Buhari. I mean, anybody at PBC who has influence. I would definitely love to see a rematch, because I thought it was a brilliant fight, and respect to both men for stepping up to the plate and making a really good fight happen for the boxing fans. Frank Martin is still explosive, right? So Albright has to be wary of that in a rematch, and he had to be wary of that in the first fight. But honestly, Albright was walking him down. Albright was hurting him. Albright was showing that, you know, he is one of the craftiest fighters out there, and I got a lot of respect for Albright and his overall fight game, and I have for a long time, and I'm gaining more respect for it as his career progresses. Sometimes, you know, you get fighters that don't have a big name per se, and maybe at first, you know, they don't get a lot of headlines, but then you watch their career unfold, and you're like, damn, this guy is really good. He can actually really fight, and he's one of those guys for me, because he's been tested. Keyshawn Davis, Carlos Balderas, Frank Martin, Kelvin Davis, you know, Jermaine Ortiz. He's won some, he's lost some, but he's always been worth the watch. He's always been in the fight. He's always been a guy that has true skills. So we'll see how it goes. Frank Martin and Buddy McGirt have to come up with a good game plan, not just for this fight, but for other fights moving forward if they don't fight Albright in a rematch, because there's other really good fighters in the 140-pound division. And you know, one thing about Frank is explosive fighter, great athlete, you know, picked up boxing late. But he's in this fight, I think he did fade towards the end. So I think, you know, I think he might be a little bit of a front runner, but we'll see how it all shakes out moving forward. You know, I've just seen it in his career a couple times where you push the pace on Frank Martin, and when he can't knock you out early or knock you out in the first 6 rounds, he does, you know, fade a little bit. And I think Albright was able to take advantage of that greatly in this fight. So in a 12-round fight, I would favor Albright in that fight. Yeah, I picked Albright to win this fight. I would favor him even more in the rematch after what I just seen. So Frank Martin got to come with it if they fight in a rematch, and if they don't, and he wants to step it up some levels, even more so. But all in all, really good fight. Shout out to Frank Martin. Shout out to Nahir Albright. 2 really solid dudes and good fighters, putting you know, real work into the 140-pound division. But what did you guys think? Do any of you guys think I'm tripping? Like, do any of you guys think that, you know, Frank Martin won the fight? You know, leave your comments down below. Make sure you guys take the time to subscribe. And like I say in every single one of these videos, you could love me or you could hate me, but I'm just a kid from Daniel. So until next time, take care, guys.
Thank you for watching True School Sports.
Thank you for watching another video on the untouchable True School Sports empire, the home of boxing. We're on the road to 100,000 subscribers, guys. So help us keep being great. Help us keep pushing out that real boxing content for the fine folks all around the world. And make sure you jab, you hook, you Mike Tyson, you Mayweather that subscribe button. Pops, show them how do they gotta hit the subscribe button. Pop, pop, pop.